Welcome back to the Entertainment and Sports Spotlight podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Marie. Something that's dear to so many people's hearts is suicide prevention. And especially as you go into the long winter months where it gets a little chilly, cold, depressing, dark, I think it's important to know and to be aware of those people around us that may need extra love, that may need to be touched based a little bit more than the average. And we have with us today a writer and director, Madeline, who has actually created a suicide prevention film of very cool shorts. And we're very thankful to have her with us today as our guest on the show. Madeline, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I think this is a very cool message. I think it's something that a lot of people don't like to talk about because it's stressful. It's, one of those, uncomfortable situations. It's like how do we get down on that level, especially if they haven't experienced it or had a family member or somebody close to them that has gone through something like this. And I really appreciate the fact that I've read a little bit of the work and I've seen what you guys have done, and I feel like you capture this very well. And you also capture it in a short, which is difficult to get a story into a short. It's easier doing a feature because you have obviously more time. Tell us a little bit about your progression into film. How did you get started? When did you know that you wanted to do writing or directing?
So, I've always written as a child. I wrote a lot of poetry. A lot. I used to have
Wow.
a folder full of poetry. Um, and the funny story is, it was a folder I planned to give to my crush, my sixth grade crush. I never did, thankfully. And I still have it somewhere. So that haunts me a little bit. But I grew up watching films with my dad. We watched a lot of like samurai and horror films growing up. And that kind of started my love of filmmaking. And I've always had a love for writing and reading. And then I kind of fell into filmmaking in my like school career. So in undergraduate, I started as a journalism major because I thought I couldn't pursue creative writing full time. It was just not what you did from where I'm from. And I have a science background from high school. And so I was like, I'll do journalism. And so I did journalism for a bit. And then my journalism degree involved into a communications degree. And then I added a certificate of filmmaking because I fell in love with filmmaking, especially screenwriting itself. It felt like I always struggled with writing prose, but like with screenwriting, it married like poetry writing and like how visually and image based that is with creating something tangible that eventually gets to be put out into the world.
That's very true. Actually, that's a really good way to put it. I think you summed up writing screenplays probably the best I've heard so far. That's actually a really good way of putting it.
Yeah, and it was just like a match made in heaven. I was like, I can finally write what I'm seeing these stories in my head.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hard to get that across, especially get it across on paper, right? So I feel like you definitely have a gift in that way. With what I've read so far, it's very cool. And I got to read the whole script, so I was very thankful for that. I think this has been really interesting because I like with what you did with this that you guys, you think about, you focus on cheerleading squad. You think about those guys as like the prime, right? They're the ones that are the happiest. They're the ones that nothing goes wrong in their life. They always have something good. So I think it's really interesting that that was the person that ended up committing suicide, and then the friends were trying to figure out what happened, like what's going on. So tell us a little bit about why did you choose to do something on this topic? What was the story behind it?
So I've always been passionate about mental health in general. It's something that I've been working on and it touches a lot of people that I know.
Yeah.
And during graduate school at the University of North Carolina School of the Arts, I studied screenwriting there and it was fantastic and great and this magical place where you get to do all this work. And then one day a fellow student in the School of Filmmaking died by suicide. And he was the same age as me at the time. He had work on Discovery Channel. He had these amazing short films that I watched and my professors raved about. And he was very successful
Hmm.
and gone in an instant, right? And
Yeah. Wow. And it's like,
it
why?
exactly. And it's like, if someone like that can die by suicide, then anyone can.
Exactly.
And it touched, like, it ricocheted throughout the whole school. And he was an undergraduate student. I was a graduate student at the time. And it even affected us because I had friends of friends in the undergrad program. And it was heartbreaking to watch some of them struggle with the aftermath. And it was hard for us to struggle with the aftermath. And my professor at the time, my mentor, Peter Werner, he was very concerned about it. And it was one of the last conversations that we would have, unbeknownst to all of us. And a few weeks later, he died in his sleep. He was an older man. And so I was experiencing a lot of grief at this time,
Yeah.
grief over the student who died and grieved over my mentor and beloved professor. And especially when that was like one of the last conversations we had. And
Totally relate with you on that because I don't think people realize how much mentors mean and how much coaches mean. That influence, they are so influential in a person's
mhm,
life. I've had multiple mentors that have passed away and they're just humongous influences. And I actually was just super frustrated the other day because it was like, man, I really miss this my mentor. I know I could have talked to them about this. So yeah, I guess you're
exactly. And it felt lost. Like I felt lost. And the one thing that kind of kept me grounded was writing. And I happened to be working on this piece at the time. It didn't have suicide in it yet. All I had was I want 3 cheerleaders doing a seance. That's all I had. And I thought maybe it's a murder and it would be about this and it would be a mystery. And then all of this happened and I had a slight crisis of, oh my God, all I write about is death. Like I had a little identity crisis. But then I was like, this is an opportunity to talk about how I'm feeling. And so I decided that this would be the next project that I would do. And it took me a couple of years to write it actually. Um, and it ended up like me having to lock myself in a cafe to finish it. I was like, I'm not leaving here until I've written everything. And part of it is based on what happened with the student who died, my grief of the student and Peter, my mentor, but also at the end there's a monologue that the main character gives. That was taken from a direct, like, journaling exercise I did. I literally wrote, "What are all the things I wish I could say about this?" And I wrote it down, and then I took that and plugged it into the script. And so the script ended up being these 3 friends reuniting over the death of their captain and holding a seance to figure out what happened and why, and that they're finally going to talk about suicide. Because typically, what happens when suicide happens to a community, it ricochets and it ends up being a lot of surface level talk of, well, they were bright light gone too soon. They, you know,
something
they lost the
secondary.
battle, is something that's sometimes said. And keep by us keep talking in those like codes, we're not actually talking about suicide and we're not talking about what actually happened. And so my main character is frustrated by that and she just digs into our friends and is like, we're going to have this conversation whether we like it or not. And what ends up happening and why I wanted to create this was to show like it can happen to anyone, especially the successful kids who have a lot going on privately, who may not ever talk about their lives in school or talk about what's personally happening to them. They'll tend to keep it on the success. And so I wanted the captain to be this like mentor to these girls who died by suicide to encapsulate what happened with Peter, but also I made her have a full ride scholarship and have all these accolades, and to kind of encapsulate, if someone like that can die by suicide, anyone can.
Yeah. No, I love that you brought that in because I think we all think about, okay, well, that person's naturally, more depressed, but it doesn't just happen to those type of people. It could happen to somebody who, is this huge famous person that has life going for them, or we think they do, right? And I love that you brought there's there's more to it, and I do think there needs to be more conversations about it, and it needs to be talked about more, and it needs to be more than just that surface level. But it's hard to get people to do that because sometimes people don't understand it. Sometimes people just are uncomfortable talking about it. And I feel like this is kind of an interesting take on bringing all that out and making it tangible. So I think you did a really good job with that. I haven't seen the finished film, but from what I've read, it is really interesting.
Yes, and I think what we wanted to do and what we ended up trying to do is just spreading awareness about suicide and also about the aftermath of how these three girls, the other characters in my script, they're irrevocably changed, like, throughout their whole lives now. And that's what happens when death comes upon us.
Yeah. And it bothers you, like, it affects you probably more ways than you think. Sometimes the human body, when you have something that you love that passes away, whether it's unexpected or not, you go through this grieving process and you can't necessarily put your finger on it. Sometimes it hits you if it's on an anniversary or if it's during some time that you're doing something that may be slightly similar or related. And it hits really, really hard in different ways. Sometimes you're happy weirdly, or you're sad and you're mad. Like it just, there's a lot of different emotions that go into that. So I think you kind of have, you got this squad that this gal has got who passed away, and you have the different avenues of grief. There's denial. You've got one person that's like just devastated, and then you've got the other person that's trying to be more lighthearted. So I think that's just it's very stunning how you have put all those together to create that piece. So when you guys were filming this, what was something that happened during the film that maybe you didn't expect that kind of helped bring things more cohesively together, or just like everybody vibes? Tell me a little bit about the actual filming of it.
Oh, well, it was great. It was a 1-day shoot, so there's some stakes.
Yeah.
But we had a couple digital rehearsals because some of my actors were in Augusta, Georgia, some of them were in Atlanta or outside of Atlanta. And so we all met digitally, and instantly all three of the girls clicked, and it was magical. And they created this rapport that really comes through in the film. And that day, like, if you've ever been a part of film, pre-production takes so long and it's so much prep work just for 1 day or a few hours of shooting. And it went as like best that it possibly could, which is something I could truly am thankful for. It flowed, it went well, and there was a magical moment where I talked about the monologue. It's quite emotional, and something happened in the take. Some people wanted to cut, and I was like, we're just gonna stay. We're just gonna stay on this because I want her to finish this monologue. And she did it beautifully, and it ended up being the take that we went with. And it was just one of those moments of like movie magic.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. And let me tell you, we are fired up to have you here. Your likes, your subscriptions, your shares, every single one of them is a game changer for this program. This show runs on pure passion and self-funding, so your support keeps the lights on and the cameras rolling. You're not just watching, folks, you're part of the team. Keep that engagement coming, because together we're taking this show to the next level. Now here's where you come into the game. We want your suggestions, potential guests, topics you're excited about, stories you want to hear, industry professionals, friends in the field, subjects that fire you up. Send them all our way. Your input shapes this show, folks. The ball is in your court, so let's make it happen.
That's awesome. As a kind of a good director's moment, right? Where you need to make sure that you stay focused on what the ends, what your end story is. And you know that the story arc sometimes better than what other people can see. And yeah, it's always going to be open to outside information and advice, but it's good to know where you want to land with this. And so it's good that you stuck with it. It shows that director's side to you, right? So I think that's really cool that I popped up a little bit of inspiration here for like, this is the mood board. When you're creating a film, you want to create the vibes so that it helps not only the director, helps all the crew, it helps your DPs, it helps everybody with getting the film on points for what you want to get shot. Also can help with pitching, things like that. So that's what this guy is. Do you want to explain a little bit as to what your creative process was? I know you had created the cheerleaders and then seance, but like, what was your kind of inspiration for this type of feel?
It comes from a funny story that I had with my mentor. We went out and shared a slice of cake, and I wanted his opinion on a short film that I wrote. This is a completely different film. It was about ghost hunters. And he sat me down and he asked me to my face, knowing that I tend to be a genre writer in the horror and thriller space. I love a good boogeyman. And he's like, Maddie, who are you without the ghouls and goblins? And that struck a chord with me because I honestly didn't know. And this project slowly evolved, and this is who I am without the ghouls and goblins. It's still a little spooky because I was like, I really want these cheerleaders to be contrasted by the supernatural and the weird. And so I was like, they're going to do a seance because this is their last straw. And this is the only thing one of them can think of to start this conversation. And we just need to talk to her one time, which is what everybody's wish is when someone passes, is I wish we could have one last conversation. And so that's why I juxtaposed them against like this spooky Ouija board session. And I was like, let's let it be gothic. And let's let it be quirky and fun. And it's really about the conversation. It's not about the seance itself. It's just about the conversation and them finally having it after all this time.
I like how you brought in so many different threads to the story. I'm always looking for that in scripts, so I just absolutely love it. What was something that you learned from this experience? I think every set teaches you something. What is something that you learned through this experience?
So I guess I learned a lot. I learned so much, and I know that's a cop-out answer, but I am going to give you actual answer. It would happen in post-production. Post-production really taught me, and sitting with my editor, and we would have these long editing sessions. That taught me so much about film because it's been a while since my first short film, and I edited myself, my first one, and so it was nice to have an actual editor. And I learned so much. I learned the importance of shooting more than you think, even more than you think.
Yeah.
Like, I thought I shot so much footage, but I was like, I could have used even more. And then I learned on set to mainly trust myself and the vision, and moments of magic will happen if you just let your actors act and don't micromanage them. And I also learned as a writer the importance of an establishing shot, establishing the mood. And so I learned from each step of the process and constantly learning to pitch. That is something that I had to do throughout this entire process, was pitch this film and pitch myself and pitch my team and the concept. And so pitch, pitch, pitch.
Yeah, you get your log line and everything down pretty good after working on one film because, I mean, you're just constantly pitching that, you're sharing it, you're trying to get it into film festivals, which we're going to talk about here in a second. And you have to be articulate enough so that people are like, they want to listen to you. Because, especially if you're trying to pitch to a studio or you're trying to get into a space that's a little bit more heavily populated, especially a film festival, you have to be able to get it across in a very short period of time. That log line is only so long, and what is that elevator pitch? So yeah, it gets annoying, but it does help you summarize things pretty quickly in a way that people would be interested to listen. You guys are getting us into film festivals, so tell a little bit about what that process.
So that was our next step. We shot the film in August. We've edited it since then and worked with the composer and got it ready. And we hit our deadline of December. And now we are officially submitting it to a bunch of film festivals. We decided to go this route because it is an art film in a way. It's not just a suicide prevention film, and we wanted to highlight that and show its merit. And so we've decided to submit to a bunch of different film festivals for a bunch of different reasons. Some because they're well known, like Austin or Sundance. Some that are more targeted for like female storytellers, Southern voices, etc. And so that's kind of our next tangible step, is to get this into the festivals, and then we'll decide distribution afterward.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's smart. Get some awards and things like this usually do really well in film festivals because they're more that artsy space. Artsy films usually do really good in film festivals. It's just their space for them. I'm very excited for you guys getting this in that direction. You guys have gotten a lot of real world experience with this whole thing because you're building up your portfolio and you've already gotten to work on a suicide prevention, which has been sponsored by the hotline, national hotline. Tell us a little bit about how that was getting that interest from a national prevention system.
Yes, so at first, I didn't write this to be a suicide prevention film. It just naturally developed into one. My producer, Neil Davenport, he was able to decipher that out of the script. And he chatted with me and persuaded me, like, I think we could really help a lot of people with this. Because sometimes it's hard as a writer. You have blinders on and you're like, I don't think anybody wants to read this, or I don't think this can help anybody. This is just something so personal. And Neil was like, no, this is a universal experience. Like, people are touched more often than not by suicide. And I knew that. And so we wanted to build a reputation as a brand, and like a reputation as someone telling these stories. And so we reached out to 988 and they were like, we love it. We love the premise. We would love to be a part of it. And so we're very thankful for them because they do such a great amount of work in our country. For those of you who don't know, 988 is our national mental health hotline and substance abuse hotline. And so if you ever need help or someone to talk to, you can text or call them. And they're also online. And so it was a pleasure to work with them, and we actually filmed a little short PSA at the end because this is such a heavy topic. We wanted to we wanted people to know that there's help out there. And we even put a content warning in the front of our film because this information and this topic can be triggering. And so we wanted to just be as upfront as possible about it and that this film discusses suicide to prevent anybody being triggered or in any sort of way, but also prepare to watch something about it. And then there's the PSA at the end just to call to action that there is help out there. And it's there 24/7.
I love that. And I think it's important to partner with anybody that when you need help, don't ever feel afraid to reach out. We're all human beings. We need to be willing to get help when we need it. Madeline, thank you so much for sharing your story and how you got to your short film. Is there anything else that you would like to share with the audience, like words of wisdom, any type of thing that you've learned that you feel like you'd like to pass along?
I think eventually, like, our theme that develops throughout any of us is continue to create no matter what. And I think use what you have in this moment and make a short film. Make If you're a music artist, make the song, use what you have, and just go for it. I think this is the ball that will roll. No matter what you have, you can continuously to make art, and it's an amazing experience, and I've learned so much from deciding I wanna build my portfolio as a director, and I wanna show more of my writing, so I wanna make this short film, and it ended up being a transformative experience that I never would have had if I hadn't created with what I have.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't ever, no project's too small. Always keep creating. And even if you think it may not resonate with audiences, I can guarantee you that you'll find an audience. There's going to be something that it'll resonate with. You're not the only person who's had that thought, that feeling, that whatever. You can definitely strike a chord with just about anybody. I think that's great advice, Madeline. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, and I guess my last piece would be, like, if you ever need help, reach out to someone or reach out to 988. As one of my characters said, like, "Why didn't she reach out to me? She could have talked to me."
Yeah.
That's all we want at the end of the day, more so than to grieve and go through that experience. We'd rather listen, and I think anybody would say that.
No, that's very true. Reach out. Don't feel don't feel like you're being small or don't feel like you're being pathetic. There's this huge stigma where it's like you got to be strong or not show emotion. Like that's for the birds. Just take it out.
Exactly.
Like reach out, get help. We're all adults. Let's do this. And if you're, a young teenager or somebody who's really struggling with home life or something, see if you can find friends, see if you can find a mentor, a teacher, somebody that will listen to you. Oh, and even reach out to the hotline and see how they can help because I know these people are amazing and they know how to spot things, they know how to listen, and you're not going to feel judged. It's going to be very, welcoming. I'm excited to see where your film goes. I'm very excited, hoping that it gets into a lot of film festivals or at least a couple really good ones, get some good traction, maybe into distribution as well afterwards. So that would be pretty awesome.
Thank you, and I appreciate having this opportunity to talk with you today.
Absolutely. So excited to have you on here. I think short films are really cool. I also think people that are coming up and learning so much about filmmaking, they have a fresh perspective on life and they've got a really cool perspective on bringing new visions to the industry. So I'm all for this. I love it. All right, guys. Well, tune in next time. Happy New Year and looking forward to the future. Make sure you reach out if you have any questions or need any help. And stay tuned for our next incredible guest that we'll have on our show. Take care. Thanks for supporting.